Historically, the word cult referred to devotion to a certain figure or place within a mainstream religion. But the sense of excessive devotion to a central figure has carried over to our understanding of cults today. This kind of cult refers to a social group with deviant or novel religious, spiritual, or philosophical beliefs and practices. Cults may be small, local groups with few members, or international organizations a million strong. Various groups have been labeled as cults: those devoted to self-improvement and utopian living, political change, alternate marriage or sexual practices such as polygamy, preparing for doomsday, even racism and terrorism. At first glance, the various aims of these groups might seem to be quite different. So what connects them? Some say they have nothing in common except being framed as deviant and dangerous. Others see a clear underlying template where charismatic and tyrannical leaders require unwavering devotion from gullible members, brainwashing them into leaving their families and communities, sometimes even convincing them to commit dangerous or violent acts.
Everybody is afraid of death. And that's what's holding things up. Nobody's content right now with the world they've created, yet their minds are all locked by a fear of death.
Members of some of the most notorious cults of the 20th century have killed others, eaten others, injected children with LSD, and killed themselves. Groups who have deliberately hurt others or each other, or who are at a high risk of causing members physical or psychological harm, are known as destructive cults. Most destructive cults have been accused of things like sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and financial manipulation. But there have also been tragic and high-profile cases of destructive cult activity in the 20th century where people, sometimes many people, lost their lives.
The People's Temple services, they had life, they had soul, they had power. We were alive in those services.
I represent divine principle, total equality, a society where people own all things in common, where there is no rich or poor, where there are no races. Wherever there's people struggling for justice and righteousness, there I am, and there I am involved.
In 1955, Reverend Jim Jones founded the People's Temple, which combined Christianity with communist ideology. Emphasizing racial equality, Jones's group at first provided a haven for African Americans and others seeking integration. But in the late 70s, under escalating criticism, the People's Temple moved to a remote commune in Guyana, South America, ostensibly to form a paradisical sanctuary. But by 1978, the group was in distress, with members overworked and Jones paranoid about being infiltrated and overthrown. At his orders, 912 people were either shot, committed suicide, or forced to kill their own children.
We laid it down, we got tired. We didn't commit suicide, we committed an act of revolutionary suicide protesting the conditions of an inhumane world.
Another infamous destructive cult with utopian origins was Aum Shinrikyo. Formed by Shoko Asuhara in the late 80s, at first, the group recruited young people by promoting health practices and religious ideas through manga and anime. It became the fastest growing religious group in Japan.
In the beginning, it was all very different. Aum used their own animation to present a public image that was innocent, perhaps a little childish, but essentially harmless.
But stories started to circulate about brutal initiations, extortion, and planned assassinations. In 1995, members of the group carried out a deadly attack.
7:45 a.m., rush hour, central Tokyo. 5 men board 5 separate subway trains. At 8 a.m., each man pierces plastic bags, releasing sarin, one of the most lethal poison gases known to man. 13 people die a horrible, choking death. Hundreds are injured.
Aum Shinrikyo has been involved in several violent incidents. In 1990, members murdered the family of a lawyer who was taking legal action against them. Several other murders brought their death toll to 27. They became labeled a terrorist organization, and Asuhara and other members received the death penalty in 2018. The violent ends of these cults might seem all the more bizarre, unsettling, and tragic due to the seemingly idealistic, altruistic, and even utopian ideas that may have initially drawn members to the group. Yet, the groups we come to know as cults seem to develop a distinctly destructive social dynamic. This dynamic has been identified as a sociopathic syndrome, where adulated leaders, even those who began with seemingly benevolent aims, may become corrupted by power, growing ever more controlling, demanding, extreme, or violent.
Nobody ever really joins a cult. However, once in a cult, people may experience intense psychological and social dynamics that lead them far from their original intentions. One hallmark characteristic of a cult is a charismatic leader. This leader builds on their inherent magnetism by love bombing, showering potential recruits with affection, praise, and attention to create a swift and powerful emotional bond. This bond may only appear reciprocal, as many cult leaders are also narcissistic, with an inflated sense of self-importance, a strong need for admiration, and a lack of concern or empathy for others. Unafraid to manipulate or gaslight people to meet their own goals, cult leaders also tend to be authoritarian, holding their ideas superior and expecting unquestioning obedience or submission. It clearly takes a unique type of person to become a cult leader, but could anyone become a cult member? Perhaps universally, humans are social animals. We all have an innate drive to belong to some kind of group, not just for comfort or support, but for a sense of self and a way to make sense of the world.
Anyone can be captured by a cult. I've deprogrammed 5 medical doctors. How does that happen? If you're in a position where you're isolated, you're alone, you're hurting, you're worried, and a group comes along and says, look, we've got the answers. We can help you. They've got to have something good. Otherwise, no one would be taken in by them.
Still, certain people may be more likely to join a cult. Since cults often style themselves after families, people who have troubled or tumultuous childhoods may be drawn to the sense of security and connection a cult provides.
You know, I always need. I didn't have a dad really when I was growing up. So my dad was never really around when I was younger. He was very into smoking weed, and he was quite selfish. But he was a good man because he brought Krishna consciousness. He brought this movement or this faith to my mum, and my mum was very strong. She had a very strong attachment to the lifestyle and to the philosophy. We care for each and every single person who's part of the movement, and that's what a monk is. You know, it's known as a brother. And then we call all the women here Matajis, which means mother. So then everybody's considered to be a mum. And we do nothing but, you know, worship God, who's also considered the father. So then the father element is there. So this idea of family is like so heavily ingrained in the movement.
Beyond the personal psychology of joining a cult, could there also be a cultural psychology making it more likely? Studying religion cross-culturally, anthropologists going all the way back to Bronislaw Malinowski have suggested that levels of cultic affiliation and religiosity in general are higher in environments of uncertainty. Many people today are facing economic precarity and fraying social networks, and many people are seeking to live a more caring, connected, responsible life. Young, impressionable seekers may be drawn to alternative groups others consider cults.
My name is Keshab Gil Aviv, and there's meanings to that. If you want to know the meaning, okay. It means the springtime joy that comes from hearkening with the intent to obey. I met the community one night in Princeton, New Jersey. I was a little skeptical and wary, for whatever reasons. I'm sure there's lots of good reasons for one to be a little wary about people and cults or whatever, But at the same time, I really wanted to be open to whatever it was that was going on. And I believed this was a place of healing.
Cults seem to offer stability in an unstable world, inviting new members to help build something good. But that something may not be as stable or as good as it seems.
People have the idea that the people who get into cults have some kind of mental problems, and that's absolutely not the case. First of all, cults want to recruit high-functioning individuals. They want people with money, and they want people with connections. They want you to be a good worker. They want you to work very hard. Cult leaders don't work very much. They're usually pretty lazy. So everyone else has to keep the show going. Cults aren't going to take care of you. You're there to take care of them. So they're looking for the kind of person who can perform for them, who can bring in good contacts that will lend legitimacy to the group. Now, while you're in the cult, you may develop all kinds of anxiety and panic attacks because of the stress of what you're living under. But it's good, idealistic people who get into cults.
Cult members may become so deeply involved and enmeshed that they withdraw from their previous lives, estranging themselves from their previous communities, interests, and studies, even abandoning their families and seeming to undergo a total personality change as to become practically unrecognizable.
How does that make you feel, to lose your mother to a cult?
I realized she's a lost cause, and it wasn't healthy for me to keep ties, so I just kind of let her go. It's no use in keeping in touch with her.
In the 70s and 80s, brainwashing became a popular theory for how and why people could undergo such drastic changes after joining a cult. The idea was that certain activities associated with cults, such as repetitive rituals, chanting, or meditation, could induce altered states of consciousness where individuals became susceptible to thought reform or mind control that might even require expert deprogramming. The idea of brainwashing as a way to eradicate free will and turn individuals into little more than cult minions is now widely rejected by social science and criminology experts for being overblown. Brainwashing has been replaced by other terms that are felt to more accurately reflect the psychological and social processes operating in a cult dynamic. These are conversion, conditioning, and coercion. Conversion is a radical or striking change in attitude, emotion, or viewpoint. It is often religious in connotation and can be experienced in one powerful moment. Conditioning is learning how to behave in a certain way in response to certain stimuli. We are all conditioned by our parents, teachers, friends, and broader society to think, feel, and behave in certain predictable ways. Conditioning techniques often include things like tangible or intangible rewards and punishments. Coercion is forcing people to do things under threat of harm to themselves or their loved ones. This harm might be immediate and tangible, such as violence, or more a matter of belief, such as eternal damnation. Conversion, conditioning, and coercion are tactics used by many different groups to get their members to do all kinds of disturbing things they wouldn't have done before. And while cults are often associated with a charismatic leader, the real power of cult persuasion may be found in these group dynamics.
To be part of this sorority, you have to start at the lowest of the low, at the bottom. And that means today, you guys are going to be dogs for us.
The audience is advised that the following program involves themes which could be disturbing for some viewers. on Spotlight.
My brainwashed side was saying, wow.
We've uncovered a cult using suburban shopping centres to recruit young Aussie girls.
While rarely fatal, joining a destructive cult can be awful for members. And such cults are quite rare. So why do we take such a voyeuristic interest in them? Is it just exploitative entertainment? Is it because we know that anyone could fall prey? Or are cults being more purposely framed as lurid entertainment for another reason? That is, to maintain the religious, racial, and political status quo. Numerous anthropologists today have become quite skeptical of the entire cult concept. They argue that with the very word, all cults are framed as destructive cults, essentially groups of dangerous fringe lunatics. This actually serves to legitimize and whitewash mainstream religion and its power, while further marginalizing those who might critique or protest it. After all, what's the real difference between the extreme beliefs of a cult and those of a sanctioned, organized religion?
His perfect work is being worked in you.
There's a lot of things that hell wants to use to influence you. There's a lot of twisted truths and perverted things that hell wants to constantly...
There's an old joke that organized religion is just a cult plus time. Anthropologist Megan Goodwin has argued that there's actually no such thing as a cult, but the term is used as shorthand for religion I don't like, or religion but bad. In other words, people use the cult concept to police the boundaries of what counts as legitimate religion and what doesn't, and, while doing so, reinforce the idea that mainstream religion is a force for good.
Burn this thing. Burn this thing. In the name of Jesus. In the name of Satan, you bow your knee.
America was founded on religious freedom, and yet we still fear, dissuade, discredit, and even punish any religious difference deemed too far from the predominantly white Christian mainstream. Throughout America's history, for example, Black-led religious innovations have been viewed with suspicion, labeled as cults, and met with violent action.
It's 5:27 p.m. State police helicopter drops it. There is the explosion.
What you're looking at now is a live picture of the water cannons pouring high-pressured streams of water onto the top of the move house.
They won't call it. Police commissioner all the time.
30 years ago, when the MOVE activists were bombed here in Philadelphia, the ways in which this country was terrorizing Black communities, I'd love to say that things are totally different from then to now, but in so many ways, the attacks on our movement continue to persist.
The way the mind works is often to develop concepts and then to live within the concepts rather than in the immediate experience. So that you develop a concept of who you are and who another person is, and then you live in terms of the relationship between the concepts rather than in the immediate experience that exists between two human beings.
To free the minority, or minoritized, religious groups from all the baggage that comes with the word cult, anthropologists have proposed the term New Religious Movement, or NRM. For decades now, some psychologists have argued that involvement in new religious movements may actually have predominantly beneficial and positive effects, particularly for those who have felt excluded or marginalized in mainstream religion and society.
When I first started meditating, I felt
a calm, and it was like I could handle situations head on. I was very relaxed, and it was like new energy for the rest of the day.
I was really going off the curb. I didn't know I was stressed out. Meditating gave me the opportunity to really get healthy again. I wasn't healthy.
I have people who come and say, I can't do my life because I have all these things I want to do, but I'm just so anxious. They start meditating, and that inner peace and calm becomes more dominant, which allows them to be happier, more productive, and that feels really good.
In the end, just like those who join world religions and espouse widely shared beliefs, most who join new religious movements or groups that coalesce around extreme beliefs are looking for order, meaning, purpose, safety, and connection. Some might actually find this. Others may find themselves conditioned or even coerced into harmful behaviors or beliefs. There has been legitimate countercultural critique to be found in different groups labeled as cults. There has also been genuine suffering, abuse, and egregious violence. And while there may be certain common psychological patterns underlying the development of extreme groups, there's no bizarre cult magic. Rather, just an extreme variation on familiar, even universal dynamics of human psychology and society. Are there any cults you've heard about? How did you learn about them? How were they portrayed? How do you think individual members in the cult would feel about this portrayal? The anthropological critique of the cult concept claims that the idea of a cult has been manipulated to legitimize pre-existing power structures that conflate race, religion, and politics. What do you think?
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more, here are some useful resources in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get your regular dose of anthrodorphins.